Okay, I think my work is actually super contemporary. But it's weird that it's obviously because I'm drawing inspiration from a very traditional painting and periods of traditional painting. I think it is so. I think when you draw paint or draw anything realistically, you're kind of put in this box of, okay, this is the older style and it's not contemporary. But I learned to paint entirely on the digital platform. So I learned to draw very mechanically, very sort of just with my hands.
Yeah.
And but when I moved into the digital platform, what I was doing was I'm not sitting there mixing colors. I have like all the colors in the universe is available to me. You know, they're right there. So it's if you were to watch me paint, it's very fluid. So I'll use a stylus, which sort of replicates kind of somewhere between a felt marker and a brush. You know, it's kind of like but there's certain techniques that I will use.
Right.
For instance, like I'll start a painting. I don't care what size the canvas is, so I'm purely thinking concept.
Right.
Right. So when you do a traditional painting, you have to. Well, first of all, you draw it's onerous. You draw the whole thing out.
Right.
Then you do a complete color sketch.
Right.
Then you do your final. So you've already created the boxes.
Right.
The sketch stage might have been the loosest you were, where there's no boundary, but then you place it in this boundary box, and then you add detail. For me, if I do a painting like this one here, for instance, this painting was just about like 3 bands of colors. So I just started with the background, and initially the painting was like this, and then it grew into this. Then I'm like, you know what, I need this. Right. So I kept adding space as I needed it, so it's really fluid. And I started in a very sort of abstract space. I wasn't as concerned about the figure. I knew the placement of the figure, and I knew that this is what I really want to direct the view to in terms of detail. But the whole spatial energy, the mood, the fact that everything feels intangible, you're not really sure where Guru Gobind Singh Ji is walking. It's because it's kind of a mental space.
So interesting.
Right? So I didn't want to ground anything,
right.
And I really wanted to connect with Guru Sahib and Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, and that communion, that silent communion between the two. Every time I do a new painting, I challenge myself never to let it be like the last painting.
Right.
So what can I do that's different? What's the uncomfortable space I can move into? And usually I do that in like increments. So this was a wholesale deep dive into an uncomfortable space.
Right.
And so it was very challenging. Now, the key thing was some of the concepts we wanted to convey in here. We wanted to convey the idea of 2 different moments in time, 2 pivotal moments in time. So on the one hand, we are talking about Guru Nanak as they emerged out of the water with the message, saying that Waheguru is inside, Waheguru is within.
And outside.
And then Guru Gobind Singh is saying that Waheguru can also be manifested in our outer forms. And then there's also the concept of Waheguru is everywhere. So in here, we come out of this very sort of blank space, and we move into this sort of territory. And that's why all these figures is like, well, Waheguru is everywhere. Waheguru is within everything. And then I just wanted to emphasize the importance of Guru Granth Sahib and how Guru Granth Sahib, comes, the essence of it begins here and manifests beyond the Gurus. And is our teacher from that point onwards.
And the Khanda as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is really the teachings, the Miri, the Piri, the Amrit Sanchar, there's so much in there. I mean, this is why we obviously called it First to the 10th. First to the 10th. Waheguru inside and out. I remember when the conversations were happening about this painting, and I did think to myself, one, I wonder how you're processing those, because for us, in terms of an arts organization in progression as well, that if we want to move beyond the historical and now start speaking about the mind specifically, this is a very abstract notion of how do you depict something. So obviously Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji are talking about something that cannot be seen, it can be heard, but has no shape and it has no form. This Rup Narik, which is Waiguru themselves. And I remember those conversations vividly, and I was like, wow, good luck. Because, even now when we're trying to talk about Waiguru and people, we know historically in other faiths how God is depicted, old man, powerful, and we know that that's not true. And and I remember just thinking, I wonder what you're going to do to be able to do that, because these, when I say abstract notions, I don't mean that the teaching is abstract. It's just like, if something doesn't have a shape and a form, how do you what do you do?
I mean, I just went back to certain ideas. I mean, I had thought about like the idea that Waiguru is in everyone, Waiguru is in everything. So that's why this painting has nothing really solid about it.
Right.
That's why both Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Guru Gobind Singh Ji, they're both Satguru. They're of the same. The message is deeply interconnected, just manifested differently, and everything is within everything else. Everything is interconnected. Everything is flowing. So I wanted to get a sense. There's no beginning. There's no end, and so I try to just, instead of saying, okay, how do I just allowed like just sort of a mood to sort of carry it, and I just decided to as the painting progressed, I learned to let go more and more. Initially, I was really just almost being putting too much into it, and then as I sort of eliminated the things that were unnecessary, that was maybe and just allowed it to be more an expression of color and movement and a few simple forms, the painting worked.
You know what I've also really enjoyed about this one is that people can't understand who this is. And they'll always say, is this a younger Sri Guru Gobind Singh? Which, do you know what, as provocation, as a thought, like, it doesn't matter. But for me, I know we've had so many conversations where we're like, we have to start showing Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji as a young man, because that's when it all started. Obviously, their Udasi started when they were in their 20s, but they were Antarjami, they were Satguru from birth. But the fact that we always depict them as this old man is just such a shame, because they were such a rebellious, revolutionary teacher that from birth, know, and it's so amazing to now. And you know what, the other thing is that we have these paintings are moments in history, as in historical history, but they're now, especially we'll go to the book in a second, but we're capturing moments. This is history as well, teaching people that we're almost sort of saying, we might have been, all those old masters that have painted Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. It's now our time and our responsibility to sort of say, hang on one second. We need other imagery to show that they, that they were young.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get so stuck on, even for myself when I first started, even I found it hard to mentally break away from that idea of Guru Nanak Dev Ji as an old man, and then we fall into this idea, this strange idea that we have that Guru Nanak is the peaceful one and Guru Gobind Singh is the warlike one, and it's really like, they were both speaking of the same revolutionary message. Guru Nanak Dev Ji criticized the kings, the tyrants of his time. He witnessed like how the forces of greed and avarice, like how much they tormented the land, how people suffered under them. So Guru Nanak's message was about suffering, but as much as the internal as well as external. He was very critical of that. But in his time, he was able to sort of he gave us that message, and then it took, 9 remaining, figures and with Guru Gobind Singh Ji at the last, to build that community that could then manifest change.
Yeah. They talk about Simran, they talk about Bhakti, they talk about the internal and controlling your mind from the inside. That's the contemporary connection. Because somebody said to me, it's the thing that you're talking about with this exhibition is the spiritual evolution of Sikhi. And I was like, well, if spirituality is above and over time, how is that? The only thing is, we're doing exactly the same as all these gurus and these warriors did in this practice of Simran. That's a direct connection between myself and these amazing human beings. But the only thing that's changed or evolved is the time. The things on the outside, the things that these eyes see, that's what's evolved.
Yeah.
And that I just think is that's what's so powerful about this.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it before, that you very rarely see your work put together like this.
Yeah.
And we have the gurus, it's almost like unintentional but intentional at the same time, that the gurus are on the outskirts, that they're like encompassing all the history. What do you think of this? Not curatorially, but in terms of your work, seeing all these people together.
I mean, it's like I said, you get so focused when you're painting one painting that what you've done before sort of drops away, and maybe that's sort of a good thing for me, because then stylistically, I feel like I'm not trying to create a link.
Right.
But there are just connections in all of them, in the sense that there's one approach that I always do, consciously, subconsciously. I'm showing his bravery, I'm showing his valor, I'm showing the peace that he manifests, but at the same time, that sort of energy that I want to sort of convey is conveyed through like the background, through like other elements, you know? So in all of the paintings, I realize like more and more that like I'm always focused on the abstract concept of the painting, and then I fill it. So I take an abstract painting and I think I bring it into sort of a traditional rendering in the final. But frankly, it's like the abstract shapes here. You know, I mean, for instance, this is like a kirpan, right? And it's just to emphasize. So using a form that we understand, but using it also as a righteous weapon against the unrighteous, and sort of embedding that in the paintings. And all the colors are a big part of that, like just sort of the backgrounds, you know. For instance, the painting of Bhai Bachitra Singh Ji, I wanted to capture this sense of almost eternity or something, just something like this sort of absolutely gorgeous, beautiful moment locked away in time. So the clouds are billowing, it's sort of like, I wanted to emphasize this sort of like, it's such a magnificent moment in history.
Right.
So I used so I used just an unusual color palette.
Right.
I used these sort of billowing clouds, but it has a sense of like a faraway time to it, you know? So a lot of the times, what's happening with the colors in the background, the sunsets, but they're not arbitrary. I don't just say, okay, I'm going to make it orange or I'm going to do whatever. The colors that I pick kind of reflects also the sort of psychological space that is the figure, the individual is manifesting.
Amazing.
So I'm kind of using the landscape to show this is the state of their mind in a way. So
difficult one. Anybody that's here, especially when I was here, we did a tour on Thursday morning. And I guess if you're a Sikh and you know Sikh history, this you don't even give it a second glance, in the sense that you're like, oh yeah, I know who this is the story of. But somebody who doesn't know the story finds the notion of this action to be incredibly difficult. Because like, what is about to happen? What is it about this one that hasn't turned into a painting yet? And I actually quite like it in its raw form.
I already see this painting completely. I just have not had a chance to come at it. But there's two things I want to convey in this painting. So this painting about Taru Singh, and he's essentially about to be scalped. So it's a painting of peace meeting just ferocious violence. So the way I will convey that is I want to convey absolute stillness here, absolute peace and acceptance. And the way I will do this figure is in a very kind of fierce, sort of almost Francis Bacon-esque. I want to show like, and it's moving. I don't even want it to say like it's just, I want to get a sense of movement and violence. Just like, so it's an epic, I want people to almost cringe at it, but at the same time I want this is the focus, this face, and then the wall behind it will radiate like a sort of a sunset lit back wall. So it'll be like, and just be just, I just want a sort of a golden radiance to all of this.
These stories are so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And that, for that reason, that's why we're here, isn't it? That's why we're in the Library of Birmingham, where we can't lose this time, and especially for the next generation.
Yeah.
And they should see our history.
What connects all Sikhs, from what I've seen, what I've felt, is that there's this vibrant, these stories, you know, the story of Bhai Bachitra Singh, this story of the many stories of Guru Gobind Singh. I mean, I will see Sikhs who are not, you know, traditional Sikhs, but they'll tear up talking about Guru Gobind Singh. So obviously they're connected, and they have a connection. And it's such a powerful connection. And so I think it's I really feel it's important that we are supportive and encourage artists in our own community, and we create spaces for them where they will interpret our stories, you know, and not just our recent stories or sort of the immigrant struggle or whatever, but the bigger story, because I don't know if we're going to care about the immigrant struggle another generation from now. Okay, it's done. Like, you know, we're here now.
And we can see that already in our own children, right? Like, like how interested are our children in our grandparents' stories?
They want to connect back to they want something that's exciting, and we have such an exciting past. So we have to be careful that we don't lose it. We have to be careful that it doesn't get dwarfed by a broader culture. And the thing is, it's so easy to get children to be engaged in these stories. So I'm glad that we've created this space, and I hope we create more spaces where individuals can do that.